Hi, good afternoon everyone. In this tutorial we're going to work on two different room move scenarios here. These are both fairly simple. One involves moving a unit into an unoccupied space, so simply assigning to a new room. And then we'll do a swap where both units are occupied, where we need to create availability and then be able to perform the swap following that. So to get started, we're going to work under the Reservation Management tab here, and we're going to choose Room Matrix. And depending on which resort you work at, you'll want to choose the appropriate site. For this example, I'm going to go ahead and choose the Grand Colorado on Peak 8, and I'm going to fast forward to September 22, and we'll begin with the day of the 3rd here. Awesome. So the first move that we're going to work on is essentially moving Miss Bloom here from 1220I. We're simply just going to move her up to 1220H. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is just ensure that the correct unit type that she's currently staying in is highlighted. I'm going to open the reservation by double clicking. The first thing that pops up, similar to previous TSW, are notes pertaining to this reservation and the ownership overall. Looks like here that Miss Bloom prefers a G Suite. We'll disregard that for the moment. However, we will accommodate this pref at the conclusion of this tutorial. For now, I can go ahead and close out of this, and here's the main reservation page here. And for room move specifically, we're going to work with the inventory side here. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the inventory is highlighted with this blue bar here, and that will allow us to choose the assign option here. The window that pops up here are essentially all the available room options that we can move Miss Bloom to that are currently unoccupied. And I see 1220 Hotel here. So we want to make sure that this is highlighted, and we can go ahead and hit save. But one thing I did want to touch on is by choosing the link here, it always pops up this window with accommodations this unit provides, which can get a bit old doing it over and over. So you can actually just choose over here on the right hand side by highlighting to avoid that window popping up. Just a little shortcut there that I noticed. Cool, so we have 1220 Hotel highlighted here. I'm going to hit save. And then now that I'm back in the reservation window, I can see that Miss Bloom is booked into 1220 Hotel. Alright, and now that Miss Bloom is booked into 1220 Hotel, I can go ahead and close out of this reservation window here. I'm back in the matrix, and I can check my work by refreshing down here at the bottom right, and then I can then see that Miss Bloom is now in 1220 Hotel, which is awesome. But let's say for whatever reason, or not for whatever reason, Miss Bloom prefers to be in a G unit here. What I can go ahead and do is look into this G unit reservation. And after it loads here, great, so here is the reservation for Mr. Shell. He is staying in 1220G currently, or is set to stay in 1220G. And based off of everything I'm seeing here, this does look like a unit that I could potentially use, even though it is currently booked into. And the reason that I can do that is because this option down here is currently not checked. So since this unit is not being requested by Mr. Shell for whatever reason, and it's not locked, I can go ahead and assign here. And at this time what I'm doing, I'm not going to move him to a new unoccupied unit. I'm essentially going to clear his room assignment. I'm going to press save. And then with his reservation window open, I can go back to the matrix. I can press refresh. And then I can now see Mr. Shell's reservation down here in the overbooking tank, which is great. That's exactly what we want. that has created the space for 1220G, which leaves me a clean room move for Miss Bloom here to get her the preferences that she has requested. And so to move Miss Bloom, I'm going to open her reservation. The notes here again, looks like she prefers a G suite. So by completing this room move, we will create a grand vacation for Miss Bloom, which is what we're after, right? Awesome. So to make the room move happen, we're going to ensure that the inventory field is highlighted. We are going to hit the assign button once again. And you guys can now see that 1220G, our go-to unit here for Miss Bloom, is available and good to use. So I'm going to ensure that it is highlighted here. I'm going to hit save. And I can now see that Miss Bloom is booked into 1220G. And my last step here is going to ensure that I lock this inventory. And of course add notes pertaining to the lock and why I have locked it. But since this is mainly about room moves, I will disregard that portion. And what I can do now is actually just not cancel, but just exit out of the current reservations I was working in. I'll hit yes to my changes here. And great, so I'm back in the room matrix here. I'll hit refresh to ensure I'm looking at current time. And then I can now see that Miss Bloom is booked into 1220G as in George. Awesome, so she's good to go. However, there's one final step to ensure this room move is complete. Because at this time we currently have Mr. Shell's reservation here left in the overbooking tank. In order to get this back into correct inventory, I'm going to double click on his reservation in the overbooking tank. I'm going to highlight the inventory field here. I'm going to choose the assign button, and depending on which unit Mr. Shell would prefer, it looks like he has an option here at this time for this example. I'm going to go ahead and give him 1220i just because I know that that's a good unit here on property, slope side with the walkout balcony. So actually at the end of the day, both guests here have preferences that are met for them. Cool, I can go ahead and close out of this reservation. And once again refresh the matrix just to confirm everything is in the correct place. And it looks like we have Miss Bloom here in 1220G. And Mr. Shell is all set in 1220i.